Now, to begin with, for those other people that were ignorant like me, that are unfamiliar with the band, can you just give a brief introduction?
Sure. So breaking in a sequence, or AKA bias for short. We're a hard rock alt metal band from Huntington Beach, California. And our drummer is, you may know him. His name is David Silvera, and he was formerly of a band called Korn. And then all of us, the rest of us, are just nobodies. So we get together and we love playing music, and that's really what this whole band is all about. Is just the love and passion of playing music, because there aren't really successful new bands these days coming out. So you really have to love what you do, and we do.
Exactly. And it's a really cool introductory video on your band's official website at biasofficial.com. For those that want to learn more, because I just happened to see that when I was all prepared, and I said, oh, this would be good to watch and kind of get a little more introduction. So.
Yeah. We kind of got together, and it was after a previous band that David, Joe, and Chris were in kind of like imploded. So they put out that worldwide singer search, and when I got in the band, they felt like, hey, maybe we should do some type of reintroduction video. So that's why we did that, to try to get out from under the shadow of that previous band that David, Joe, and Chris did.
Right. It's funny that you did mention Korn, because before I even looked who the members were and listened, I really sensed the Korn influence, actually, even in your vocals.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I was kind of like, oh, it's kind of, some parts remind me of Korn, and that's interesting that,
Yeah, Jonathan Davis is definitely he was one of my influences. So yeah, that's cool that you hear that in my voice, but really it's David that makes it sound like that.
Right. I was going to say, I didn't realize he was the drummer, because I was sensing that, though. I'm like, oh, I feel Korn here,
Yeah, it's definitely David that makes it sound like that, because we'll bring in riffs, the guys will bring in riffs, or I'll bring in riffs, and we have a totally different thought of how it should go in our head. And then he starts playing to it, and it's a totally different feel, because he just hears music differently than we do.
Right. Now, speaking of bias, did you said, what came first, the full name or the acronym? And can you shed some light on why bias seemed appropriate as an acronym?
Well, bias came first, right? And we thought, hey, this is a nice, easy, short name, and there wasn't really any active bands named that in the States. So we went ahead with that, but then it kind of like backfired on us, because the political climate that happened, with the election and all that, you couldn't find us. You couldn't find our music, because if you Googled bias, you would just get nothing but political articles.
Oh, wow.
Right. So then we thought, oh, hey, what if we put an interpunct in between it, and that would make it more unique. So we tried the interpunct thing. It didn't work, because people couldn't figure out how to get to their alt keyboard on their phones or on their actual keyboards to put in that interpunct to find us. So finally, we were like, we need to make this simpler. Either we completely rebrand, or we unacronym it, right? So then I put a list of all these names together of what it could be. And when I got down to breaking in a sequence, the guys all stopped me. I think David said, that's really cool. We should go with that. So we thought about it, and we're like, okay, yeah, let's go with that. And then as kind of like a throwback to bias, we named our first EP acronym, right?
Yeah, I was like, oh, now it all comes together. It all makes sense.
Yeah. So
a little bit about their search for a vocalist and how they landed you.
Oh man, they put out a worldwide singer search, I think as a press release, and they basically said, send your bio, pic, music, and all that to to a certain email, right? So I saw that and I was like, I want to do a song with David Silvera. So I submitted all my stuff and they never got back to me. I mean, they didn't get back to me for months and months and months. And I guess in that time, they had like narrowed down their search to like 3 or 4 different singers. And they brought, I think, those singers in and they were jamming with them and they were about to decide on one of them when Chris was like, you know what, I'm just gonna send it out to one more dude. And I was that other dude. So I wasn't even in the top,
Wow.
3 or 4. I was like maybe in the top 20, but they decided to send me a track and I took the track and I heard it and I was like, it's cool, but it's not in the same structure that I want it to be, for me to really sing over it properly. So I changed the structure of the song, right? And I didn't do that on purpose to grab their attention or anything. I just thought, hey, this is going to work better for me. And at the end of the day, this is for me to have, as an accomplishment, not really to join a band, So they sent me that and I rearranged it and then I put my vocals over it. And that was probably about 3 or 4 days. And I sent it back to them. And then again, I didn't hear back from them for like a week. Right. And during that time, I guess they heard it and they're like, what's this guy doing changing our music? Who's this guy think he is? Right. So then they just kind of threw it off to the side. But I guess after a couple of days, they kept listening and they're like, this actually kind of makes more sense. So then that's when they emailed me back and they sent me 2 more songs to sing over. And of those 2 songs, I sent them back 3 songs because I was able to rearrange it in such a matter that I made another song out of one of their songs. After that, they invited me down to the studio and I didn't want to do it because it was like 80 miles south, So that's like a commute that I'd have to do, that's anywhere between 2 to 3 hours with traffic, But my wife, told me, you need to do this because this is your passion. And she's right. I love music and all that. So I went down there and we started playing music and we just clicked and they just kept asking me to come back week after week. And then finally they asked me to join.
Nice. Yeah. I think that chemistry amongst each other, is so important too, and how you work together. It's
Absolutely.
you can love your vocals or what you do, but when you're all together in a room, I think that's what they really need to feel. And obviously it's to your benefit.
Yeah, definitely. It worked out and it's been a great experience.
Great. Now, you debuted the first single in January of 2019, Pity and Change Your Mind. And they both had a great response, both charting in the top 25 on the Billboard Indicator chart and the Foundations chart. And was this shocking to you guys when this happened right away?
It took time, initially when we first came out, I think people really liked it compared to the last band that the guys had released stuff from. But I do think there were a lot of people that didn't like it. And they're like, what is this band really trying to be? Because the 2 singles that we released, one was more hard rock and the other one was literally like rock, right? Because when we started, we wanted to be a rock band. And we just kind of naturally gravitated to getting heavier and heavier. And so Pity was one of those heavier tracks that we had written. And amongst ourselves in the band, when we went to go release that, we were almost going to just release Change Your Mind as the main single, right? With Pity as the side B. And we decided like at the last moment to flip flop it, right? Because I was like, David, your fans want to hear you on a harder track, not on a ballad track, So I think David's core fans really enjoyed that, but there were and there still are a lot of naysayers, if you will.
Yeah.
But we didn't write that music for them; we wrote it for ourselves.
Exactly. And then you released a third single, which was kind of in the middle of the two.
Exactly. Yes.
Hesitation, right? Which was released in July of 2019. And, that song also landed on the charts. So leading up to the release of the EP, the debut EP in January of 2021, and like you said, appropriately called Acronym, smack in the middle of the pandemic, you released this. What challenges did you face, with this timing?
Well, the pandemic completely screwed us up, right? Like it stopped us right in our tracks. It stopped all of our momentum. We had actually recorded Acronym and Defy the Algorithm in relatively the same sessions, right? And we got a management deal at the end of, I think it was 2020, with Andy Gould and Paul Gargano. And that was right at the time of the election, or right shortly before the election. And we were going to release all the music then, right? If we could get the mixes back in time. However, we were advised against releasing it during the election time because it would just get buried in all of that, right? And who we didn't know what was going on with COVID. We didn't know what was going to happen after the election. You know what I mean? So we kind of sat on it, and finally we decided, let's just release a subset of the songs, just for the fans, so that the fans can have something, because we kept them in the dark for all this time.
Right, you didn't want to be forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. So we released that, and I think there were like 2 or 3 additional tracks that people hadn't heard. And that would be like Midlife Crisis, Anything But Right, and Delusional. And if you listen to those tracks, you can tell we started morphing from our rock sound to a more hard rock sound.
Right.
In that time, we just kind of got together. We couldn't play any shows or anything, so we just got together and wrote a bunch of music, right? And we kind of just firmed up the songs from the Defy the Algorithm set. So it's been a long journey, but I think the double-edged sword is we lost all of our momentum because of COVID and all that. But if we didn't do that, we wouldn't have written these new sets of songs that no one's heard yet, because we just started tracking these new sets of songs, right? Because we want to try to get more music out to our fans.
So I said it was definitely a great time for writing during the pandemic, but it was
Right.
hard, to keep like you said, you had to also appease your fans and keep that momentum going. So it was a difficult time. I know a lot of bands were told not to release, any music during that time, when they had new albums. But then there was a controversy, because then you had people at home looking for something to do and listen to, so I know that,
right.
Some bands did and some didn't.
Yeah, and we didn't, unfortunately, but I'm glad we didn't, because it gave us time to really fine tune these new set of songs, right? For Defy the Algorithm, because I actually went back in and I retracked the vocals on it, because I had become a better singer. So you can actually hear the difference in my vocals from Acronym to Defy the Algorithm. You can just tell that I'm singing more. Is just a lot smoother than the first go.
Can you walk me through the writing process, like when there's the initial idea to completion of a song, between with lyrics and the music?
Oh man, our writing process is a little bit strange, but it works for us. So the guys will get together in the studio, and like I said, they live and rehearse 80 miles from me, so I'm not there all the time. So they'll get together like 2 or 3 times a week, and either someone will bring in a riff, or they'll just start jamming and a riff comes out of that. And what they'll do is they'll just put together a song, very standard. David will play a very basic beat over the riff just to get it down the sections, and they'll record it. And what they'll do is they'll send me that recording and I'll listen to it with fresh ears, right? Because at that point they've worked on it for about 8 hours,
Yeah.
so they don't know.
It.
Yeah. Well, I just have a fresh perspective at that point.
Right.
So I'll listen to it and I'll cut it up into different sections and I'll re-piece it back together and I'll send it back to them and I'll tell them, look, this is how I hear it, right? So they'll listen to that. And while they're listening to that, I will listen to the song day and night, like over and over and over and over again. I want to say anywhere between 300 to 500 times. And then all of a sudden a vocal line will start popping in my head. Like, so when I hear the music, I'll already hear the vocal line, like the melodies and everything. And so once that's like natural and I can remember it, because I don't record the vocal lines. I just make sure that I remember it, because if I can't remember it, I don't think it's going to be catchy enough for people to really grasp the hooks, right?
Yeah.
Once it's been solidified and I hear it over and over again, exactly the same, I will do a syllable count on it, right? And I'll just basically, each line I'll have how many syllables they should be. And then I will just find something to write about. It could be something that I'm observing from the outside. It could be something that I'm going through, just whatever I'm feeling, because songs, especially when you're a writer, it's kind of like a time capsule, right? It captures the moment and you're basically talking about that moment, for me at least. And I'll write everything inside those syllable counts. And then if something seems too mundane, I will add either 1 or 2 extra syllables in those lines, or subtract them. And so it's kind of like a puzzle for me.
Yeah. That's interesting. I know some bands start with the lyrics and add the music. So
yeah. So then after I send them back that with all my vocals recorded on top of it, they will go back and they'll listen to it and they will rewrite their parts around my vocals. Right. So it's kind of like a multi-step process, but it works for us. You know what I mean? And that way it all feels natural and organic and things are playing off of each other, as opposed to, the bass and the guitars and the drums are doing one thing and the vocalist is doing another. It's kind of just all intertwined together.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like an extra step, but like you said, it works. And if that brings out the best work, that's, how you guys are doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer in quality over quantity, right? So I'd rather spend that extra time working on it rather than have like a whole slew of songs.
Exactly. Now I see you guys are scheduled to play the Apocalypse in the Desert Metal Fest in 2023. But before that, now that things are open for touring again, do you guys have any plans?
I'm not sure. I'm going to need to sit down and talk to our management about that. Right now, we're kind of just more focused on doing the single releases off of Defy the Algorithm, and then maybe playing a show here and there, and then tracking our third EP or album, depending on how many songs we have by the end of that. But we already started the drums on the next record, and I want to try to get that record out before the end of summer, but that's fingers crossed. No promises.
Right. Like you said, you had all that time to write. Now you got to get it done and you want to get it out. Yeah,
exactly. And then, if there's a good tour that comes up where, a bigger band is looking for a support act as direct support or something like that, then we'll be happy to try to jump onto those. But we haven't found any of those yet, because we're still getting a lot of overflow from the bands that had to get rescheduled from, 2020 up until now. So.
Right. Just had that conversation in the last interview I did, saying, now it's hard because every weekend there's multiple shows, because not only the new ones being scheduled, but the older ones, that have rescheduled from the last couple of years, that everything seems to happen at once now. So you got to pick and choose where you're going to be.
Exactly. So, I think once all that queue has been caught up, it'll be easier for us to get out there.
Right. Well, I'm a huge hard rock fan. So like I said, I absolutely love the music. Looking forward to
Thank you.
hearing some more. I'm still haven't heard it a lot. I mean, I've listened a few times, but I always like to enjoy it. But in conclusion, is there anything else that you'd like our your fans or potential fans to know that we haven't covered?
Um, no, I mean, just make sure that you guys are supporting the smaller bands, because I don't feel like smaller bands these days are getting the opportunity to reach their final form, right? Because the industry is so screwed up. There's not a lot of support backing these bands, and what I've seen out there in terms of the metal or hard rock communities is they kind of just bash bands into the ground before they can get to their super status or their final form status. Because if you listen to hard rock bands, their first record sounds completely different than their current record or their pinnacle record. You know what I mean? Because they have to be able to reach that point. And if bands aren't getting there, we will run out of bands. Electronic music is taking over everything. So you
Yes.
need to support your rock and hard rock, because that's being phased out with mainstream media.
So true. I was, like I said in the last interview, we also talked about, like the award shows. I watched some of them and I don't even know who the bands are. There's so much pop, electronic. And I said, these aren't bands I hear of or hear on the radio. But then again, like I said, I'm the
Right.
hard rock girl. So.
Well, the Grammys and all that, they don't even televise the hard rock portion of the show anymore.
I know.
So it's a sad state of affairs where rock music and hard rock, raw hard rock music is. Right. With all the bands, perfectly playing their instruments and being like robots, and
Right.
auto-tune and all that. I feel like all the bands sound the same. You don't have those stylistic traits anymore in bands or in rock or anything like that, because everything has been auto-tuned to hell.
So true. Or with so many with all backing tracks and.
Yeah, you're not going to get another Scott Weiland. You're not going to get another Lane Staley, perfecting all of these singers.
Right.
Just my opinion, but
yeah, I'm really big on, the up and coming bands. Like, this is why I like doing these interviews. I'll learn about a band. Like, I wasn't familiar with Bias. And then, I'll follow, and the satisfaction I get is seeing, like, down the road when you are on a tour, direct support for a big band and touring, and then I get to see you, to me, that's my satisfaction, of just seeing the progression and seeing, these up and coming bands make it and keeping rock alive.
Right. And, you never know when the end of our band could be, or the end of any other beginning band, because, they're not getting the support or the financial support that they need to continue on. And that all plays into all of this. Right. So support your bands is the
exactly. Buy their merchandise. You guys had some cool merchandise on your site. So buy the merchandise, buy the albums. I'm still the one that buys the physical CDs. Even if I download it to here on my phone, I like to collect the CDs, and, that's what I listen to in the car. So
yeah, see, we haven't even printed physical copies, because
right.
Most cars here don't even have CDs anymore.
Exactly. That's what it's turning into now. So
yeah.
true.
So yeah, I mean, if my friend put out a record, I always try to buy it on iTunes.
Right.
Because at least they get some of it. It's much better than the streaming rates.
Exactly. Well, it's been great getting to know you, and I look forward to seeing what's next. And hopefully you guys will get that support act and get out to the West Coast here, or East Coast, not West. You're already on the West Coast.
Yeah, we're on the West Coast.
East Coast here. And, I think your music actually would go over very well here. I'm big onto the things like, the Shiprocked, those type of cruises. And that's where I love to see bands like yours eventually get on to and just become, household name.
Yeah, just known, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me.
You're
I really
welcome.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed talking to you. And like I said, this is a new band to me. I really love the music, and you have a new fan. And hopefully I can
Awesome.
share the word and there'll be some more.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.